Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound Radio Show, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. I'm your host, Robert Winfree, and as always, thank you all very much for listening, for tuning in. This is our first episode on the, I don't know, I haven't been told to call it anything other than this, so on the off chance I wind up changing the title of this in the near future. This is our first show on the burgeoning 411 podcast network. So thanks to all of you who have followed us over, who might be discovering us for the first time, so on and so forth. Thank you again. I know there's a lot of MMA podcasts out there. There's a lot of podcasts in general, and you guys choose to give of your time to us, and time is our only truly finite resource. Money, there's always more money. Literally, they just print the stuff. Time is our most valuable commodity, and you guys choose to give it to us, so thank you very much for that. On the docket tonight, we will have a review of UFC Fight Night 143 / UFC on ESPN +1. Can I just say it occurred to me there's a really bad joke to be made about polyamory if they're going to stick with that naming scheme. It's the UFC on ESPN +25. Do you really need a +25? I mean, +1s can be hard enough to fill for some of us. You don't need to rub it in our faces, guys. So we'll be looking at that event. Some thoughts on the new production that'll go along with it. Some news as usual. Specifically, I have on my docket. Then I'll give Jeff, whatever he thinks to whatever I don't cover here. The UFC's new title belt design. A bunch of fights got announced. We'll talk about those. The bout order for UFC 234 got finalized. Amanda Nunes is apparently not going back to featherweight, and Jose Aldo plans to retire at the end of 2019. So it's just some of the stuff we're going to hit. And there should be timestamps in the notes for this podcast, or depending on where you find it. So that should be, if you just want to skip through certain stuff or around it, you can see how long it takes us to discuss a certain topic. All right, here with me is my regular partner in crime, 411 Mania's jack of all trades, because he's in all the zones. Jeff Harris. Jeff, how you doing this evening?
Who you going to call? The 411 Ground and Pound Radio Show. I'm Jeffrey Harris.
Yeah, it's funny because we can't take live callers anymore, but that's pretty good.
I'm saying, like, call on us to deliver good MMA commentary.
We try.
Literally, like, call on the phone.
We are available for jobs. I'm just going to throw that out there. I am happy to read lines for sponsorship.
Yeah.
All right. Last night, UFC on ESPN +1. UFC Fight Night 143. I'm going to usually use the conventional naming scheme because I don't want to. It's just too much of a pain in the butt for me to go back and forth between the UFC on Fuel and FX and FS1, and they're all fight nights. I'm going to call them that. It's for the sake of traditional nomenclature. It's just easier for bookkeeping purposes. So I'm happy to discuss both different names if needed for the sake of clarity, but that's just kind of how I'm rolling with this. First event of the ESPN deal. Before we get into the fights themselves, Jeff, let's suppose we can talk a little bit about some of the production elements you like or didn't like, some of the changes that were made or not made that you were interested in.
I've already canceled my 1 week trial for ESPN Plus. Now, this is more ESPN Plus than the presentation, but there are way too many commercial breaks. And then there are just those spaces where it's just the ESPN Plus logo telling you to wait for a commercial break, which makes no sense. It's a premium subscription service, Robert. Why are we dealing with commercial ad breaks on a premium subscription service that we're already paying for? It's like a direct streaming service. It's not.
I mean, I can give you the actual answer, and then I can tell you that first of all, I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
That is why I don't watch anything on Hulu. Like if I'm paying you, however much, I don't want to deal with commercials. I don't want to do it.
If it's the free, just regular streaming video Hulu, then fine.
Do they even have that still?
I haven't really
I mean, they used to, and I was again when they were providing it for free. Yeah, sure, ads. Like you guys have bills to pay. I get it.
Or what else? If you watch streaming episodes on primetime shows on the official websites like CBS.com or Fox.com, they'll be ad supported in your browser. Yeah, that's fine.
My Xfinity, which is what I have, has the streaming on demand option, and there's advertisements that will play over that. And again, like that's all fair. I get that.
This programming it's already corporately sponsored. We prospectively paid a subscription fee to buy into the streaming service. I do not want that many commercial breaks. It's nauseating, okay? Because it's one thing if it was like a cable network or a non-premium cable network, but it's not. This is a direct-to-consumer, over-the-top streaming service, and yet I felt like the programming was wall-to-wall with ads or commercial breaks. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for me for a direct-to-consumer paid. This is a premium paid subscription service, right? That doesn't work for me. They did not handle the move from the ESPN Plus prelims to the ESPN broadcast. I did not care for that because they were still on an NCAA basketball game. They're not saying, for those of you who are tuning in for the ESPN prelims, you will not be missing any of the action. We're standing by to finish the game, and then we're going to switch straight to Brooklyn.
In minor fairness to that point, and this is apparently an ESPN thing, because I agreed with you at the time. Apparently on ESPN, and I don't watch a lot of ESPN.
Well, neither do I.
Yeah, and the Chiron thing they have at the bottom.
Yeah,
it's apparent because if you're watching like FS1 or something, the Chiron at the bottom is kind of a joke.
Uh-huh.
We do need to remember that with something like ESPN, that is a much more important thing, and that information was displayed on the bottom panel. So
I did not see it at all.
I didn't see it either, but again, like I don't think I think some of that's just I'm not trained enough to look at it and actually consume the information being displayed there. But the broadcasters, the analysts have time to mention that. They're part of the I'm trying to remember a little bit of the end of that basketball game.
They didn't.
I know they didn't. I'm trying to remember if there was a place where they could have without. They probably could have.
Because this lasted for like 15, 20 minutes. They easily could have.
It was 10 minutes.
It was more than 10 minutes. They easily could have during any of that time frame, and they did not.
Yeah, I agree with you that the commentary team, the guys doing commentary for the basketball game, should have had a brief thing about for those of you looking for this.
Here's my point. If you're a UFC fan and you're tuning into ESPN, like you're okay, it's a college basketball game. You have no idea what's going on. To me, it's not. Obviously it's not a huge deal because they did fix it. But like you're preempting your first run UFC programming. I just feel like
they're like I do not believe they are contractually allowed to preempt Division I basketball games on ESPN.
But you're preempting your first run UFC programming, and we didn't miss any fights or any action, but how are we supposed to even know that?
Yeah, I think there does need to be a better mechanism in place for disseminating that information, especially because a lot of the MMA audience and the UFC audience...
Just have a thing that says the UFC is standing by. We will be finishing this game shortly, and then we will switch. We'll be taking you straight to the action for the UFC. You won't be missing any fight. Just look.
That could have been so bad though if a huge
deal, right? This is a multi-billion-dollar deal, TV deal, is it not?
Over the course of its life, yes.
Yes. So I feel like they could have handled that better. Now, those are my main complaints. All that aside, I thought the presentational elements were all well done. I think the fights were paced fairly well.
Oh, thank God for that. Like they had a couple of rough spots on the very early prelims that just like this major drag between like the first and second fights, I think.
They kept the pacing going well.
Yeah. once they got beyond that, they were fine. Like this was I mean, it's actually the same. It was roughly the same amount of time as the average FS1 broadcast, give or take.
Right.
But it felt so much better.
The most noticeable aspect to me was that was bringing in. They would do these transitional between round sound bites, like you have Coach Trevor Whitman coming in to offer some commentary, some brief commentary.
Trevor Whitman was awesome in that role. I mean, I don't think that's the role they're going to keep him in necessarily. They're going to find something that fits a little bit better, but I really enjoyed his insight in that role.
It's not like an extra person in the booth just say, we're Trevor Whitman, what are your thoughts on this round, blah blah blah.
Yeah, they had a similar thing with, I think they had Megan O'Leary, who does their, in theory, like pseudo sideline reporting. Yeah. And during like fighter walkouts, they would go to her and get just, brief things to kind of help the commentary booth along.
I enjoyed those sort of transitional elements.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I do think they, it made things feel a little different, a little more enhanced. I like those aspects. Those were just the most those were the things I tended to notice the most. Now, I wasn't a big fan. Look, I got nothing against the guy. He's a huge broadcaster. He's a huge premise in broadcast sports. I'm not a fan of Stephen Smith. I don't really know if he's the best. He's the guy you want.
It felt like he was there because of his history with ESPN more so than because of his
how much he even knows about MMA or even.
And I mean, look, in fairness, I can appreciate the value of a professional, polished facilitator for those kind of cutaway things. I mean, when the UFC was on Fox, Kurt Menefee would be on the analyst desk and would do a similar thing.
Kurt Menefee, I think, was more suited for that role.
Yeah, he was. It was pure facilitation more so than a lot of his personal opinions. And Menefee's a very polished professional broadcaster who's used to doing that. And I think Smith, credit to Smith for being.
I give him no credit.
I give him a little credit for a very specific reason. I'm familiar with his reaction to boxing events, and he was very level-headed during this event. He was not the hot take guy, thankfully. Thankfully, that was not his role.
Well,
I would like to see someone better in doing what he was doing. I'd like to see someone with more product knowledge, but there's a lot of kind of feeling out that's going to go on through these first few events as they tweak a few things. I do hope they get someone better.
I don't
have anything against Smith, mind you.
This was the ESPN Plus event, not the actual ESPN event, even though we did have fights on actual ESPN. So I'm very open-minded about it. I feel like, well, I don't think it would. I think it wasn't perfect, and there's definite room for work and improvements. I was left overall feeling very positive, but I still think we need to see more in terms of promotion, and maybe not necessarily hype material, but we need to see more. I want to see a bigger promotional push from ESPN if we're going to be all in for, UFC.
Apparently there was a fair bit in the weeks leading up to this. There were several bits during like the collegiate national championship games for football where they made an effort to let everyone know, hey, here it is. This is coming. So I don't watch college football, so I don't. So I'm really in the worst position to judge this necessarily because I don't consume ESPN generally speaking. So I don't know how much effort they're putting in.
So from what I've seen online, there was, some material on social media pushing the product and pushing the show. So I just hope it builds and stays consistent. If they are going to be a broadcast partner, the UFC. That being
said,
given
how much they paid for it.
Don't have a very positive outlook on ESPN and As of right now, I have no interest in being sort of a long-term subscriber to ESPN Plus. I do not think it's a good service,
Okay.
especially when you already have UFC Fight Pass.
Fair enough.
I
Go
I
ahead.
think it's a waste of money. Even at $5, it's a waste of money. Just because I don't watch enough. I don't watch enough sports. I don't watch enough ESPN to justify paying another $60 a year on top of Amazon Prime and Netflix.
That's fair. All right. I obviously agree with a fair bit of what Jeff brought up there. I'm still kind of waiting and seeing on ESPN Plus necessarily. I agree. Again, my whole thing with Hulu it still is, mind you, if you're charging me money to access your content, especially something like Hulu, which is so segmented, I don't want to deal with commercial breaks. I'm not a big fan of it.
I mean, if you're paying, they should be giving it to you ad free. I believe that's the deal on Crunchyroll.
I'll take your word for that.
If you like anime, if you do the premium version of Crunchyroll, I think you get it ad free, and you get content, the simulcast content as it comes out, instead of having to wait a week. Otherwise, you wait a week and you watch it with ads.
Okay.
So that's my
okay. Beyond that, the video packages that they had for like between fights and whatnot, I liked. They felt a little better. I don't know what it was that they changed. I don't know if it was just a lighting scheme or something else, because I mean it is serving the same function that they were doing before.
It looked fairly polished. They kept it moving. You know, I think we got more just sort of interview inserts building up to the main event. Look, ESPN, they've been doing this a long time. They know how to present sports. And I think they, all things considered, considering ESPN is fairly new to the MMA game, I think they did a good job. And let's be honest, none of us like the Fox robots on the Fox Sports broadcast. I think you would agree, right?
I don't hate the robot. As far as mascots go, you could do worse.
I get. All right.
The UFC on ESPN theme song type of thing that they had when they first debuted it near the end of the Fox era, I don't know what it was about it that didn't quite work for me. I don't know if it was just too many people talking over it, or if they've retooled it a little bit since then. If they did some refinements or whatnot, but I was digging that. That it's a really nice kind of blend of orchestral and rock music. It's mostly instrumental with like a bit of like sort of throat singing. I don't know how it's accomplished for the purposes of this. It might be purely really synthetic.
That much, but nothing I heard sounded awful, but it didn't really sound too memorable either. But I'd have to listen to it again.
Yeah, again, it's kind of designed to be there in the background when they're doing between stuff or showing graphics, and I thought it served the purpose well. It it kind of worked for me, so kudos to that. All right, with the production side of things out of the way, the actual fights, which were there were highs and lows, but let's start with the main event. Boy howdy,
main event.
Henry Cejudo done beat the stuffing out of TJ Dillashaw in 34 seconds.
I'm so angry right now.
What about?
This fight never should have happened.
Okay.
It was a waste. It was a waste of time and a waste of money. UFC clearly wanted to just usher out the flyweights and hopefully give TJ another belt. And that's not what happened. But we had a contender at bantamweight in Marlon Moraes. And now we've essentially screwed not just flyweight, but we've basically killed and logjammed bantamweight as well. And it makes me furious.
Okay, fair enough.
Bantamweight is screwed. It's screwed right now.
I don't know. I'm not sure. Like it absolutely could be. Let me be clear about that. It really could be. as for the fight, I mean,
that was my takeaway from this fight and all the shenanigans after the fight.
The fight itself, again, it's 34 seconds. Cejudo comes out and I imagine like this felt like his whole plan was, okay, I got one round and I'm going to go all out. And I mean, I imagine he had a plan B if the blitz attack didn't work, but he came out like
had gotten done through 12 weeks of what looks like the most brutal weight cut of his career. He looks like a character out of a Stephen King movie just a day before. Is it any wonder he had trouble taking a shot like he could at 135?
No, not. I mean, I have no doubt it was a contributing factor. Whether it was the determining factor, I don't know.
Look, I picked TJ to win.
So did I.
But
even if I had picked Cejudo, I would not have picked him to do it like this.
Well, he made weight. He was able to make weight, and he made weight without issue. But it's what that weight cut does to you.
Yeah, there's a lot, and this.
And it happened to Rafael dos Anjos too.
Yeah, he made lightweight reliably for a long time. Had a lot of success there too.
And became champion, but the fight right before he lost the title to Eddie Alvarez, he was passing out during his weight cuts. He passed out 3 times. You are literally destroying your body. You're dehydrating fluid that goes to that's supposed to be going to your brain.
Goes to a lot of places. You're sucking as much water out of yourself as possible in a lot of respects. Your kidneys,
your circulatory system, it messes you up. It's not as dangerous as fighting is. Weight cutting is equally, if not more, dangerous.
There was
and no, it was not the sole reason he lost, but.
Do I think it contributed to that? Absolutely.
But, Henry Cejudo's probably a genius now for making Dillashaw move down to flyweight instead of taking the fight at 135.
I've said before at bantamweight, this fight, it does cast a bit of extra light onto things, but I would still probably favor TJ if they fought at bantamweight.
I don't know.
Favor much. Yeah, again, there's a lot that got showed. I never
want to see this fight again. And now Cejudo, if flyweight, if flyweight shuttered, he's gonna want his title shot at bantamweight. Dillashaw, all he can talk about is getting another shot at Cejudo at flyweight, and he's acting like a child over it. He had his shot and he couldn't do it. Was the stoppage too early?
Too early, no.
I don't think it was either.
Look, on the scale of, the ideal stopping point of a fight, God, how do I phrase this? Okay, there are stoppages that are way too early, and there are stoppages that are way too late. We've all seen this. There's plenty of examples. In between those 2 points, it's not a singular point. It's kind of a continuum. There's a scale. So if we have way too early as set at, say, a 1, and way too late set at a 10, I'm of the opinion that anything between about 4 to 7 if this was a 1 to 10 scale of that rating, I would call this an 8. I would not call it that at all. I don't think this was a late stoppage.
Okay.
No. Sorry. 1 is early, and 10 is late.
Early. 10 is late.
My opinion is anything from like a 1 to about a 4 to about 3.5. So 1 to 3.5 is a premature stoppage.
This was not
anything from like 7 to 10 is late.
He got rocked more than once, as I recall. Correct?
He did. He got dropped a couple of times. Are we talking about a stoppage?
the referee gave him. I feel like he'd gotten rocked multiple times, and the referee gave him, I feel like, enough time to move and try to recover, and he continually got rocked and was getting put on queer. He was on Queer Street. He was not recovering, and he was just getting jacked. Sorry, Dana White, that was not a horrible stoppage. We've seen horrible stoppages. This was not one of those times.
Yeah. If I'm great, on the scale, is this on the earlier side of things?
Then yeah, before.
Yeah. If we're dealing with ideal being somewhere between 4 to 7, give or take, we're in the 4.5, maybe 5 range. Like this was clearly swift. Once it hit the point where a stoppage was justified. And the reality is when you get into situations like this, again, if a ref really screws up one way or the other, I'm happy to call him on it. I have in the past, and I will in the future.
Plenty of late stoppages where the ref just lets it go on and on.
Or near non-stoppages. I'm looking at you, Mario Yamasaki.
I mean, it's happened. And I feel like we've seen it quite a bit recently. To me, this was not
unjustified. Like, again, for me, this
like just the referee was already showing leniency by letting it continue as long as it did, and I think TJ has no one to blame but himself.
Yeah, my thing about this is there clearly comes a point when you enter a range of damage being taken and the situation you're in that the referee is largely justified either stop in whatever decision the referee makes at that point. Sometimes that means it gets stopped, 3 punches early. Bear in mind, when I say 3 punches early, that doesn't mean an early stoppage. It means if Cejudo had punched TJ Dillashaw in the face 3 or 4 more times, and then it stopped, it's not a late stoppage necessarily at that point. But it's also 3 or 4 more punches than he maybe necessarily has to take. And once you enter the zone of this now falls into justifiable discretion on the part of the referee, I don't think you can complain about it one way or the other. Again, are we talking about one that's... my point being, we're talking about a stoppage that was, again, on the earlier side of things, but not premature. And I think there's an important distinction to be made between a fight that does not need to be stopped or shouldn't be stopped and a fight that the referee simply deems in that moment, okay, this is over. And that's just the reality of of fighting in general. I mean, this was not the earliest stoppage I've ever seen. This wasn't even the earliest stoppage of this kind that I've seen.
Here's my issue. Fighters or fans will say we need to really see a more decisive knockout or finish in a situation like this. And TJ Dillashaw might be acting like a crybaby over this. But those extra shots to the head are not going to do him any favors.
I hate when that gets brought up because there's this very specific... No. I don't mean you. Okay. I mean when that point gets brought up.
Okay.
Like the point you're addressing.
Yeah.
Because there's a reason the standard is intelligent defense, not consciousness.
Right.
And look, was TJ still conscious at the end of this fight? Yes. Very clearly he was conscious. You don't need to be unconscious to be in a compromised enough position for the fight to be stopped. And I think there's I quite frankly have no issue with the stoppage. I'm perfectly okay with it.
TJ has no one to blame for himself. He was put in that position.
Look, he came into the fight. He slipped on a kick like he does entirely too frequently because elements of his kicking technique put him in that position. He slipped. Cejudo kicked him in the face as he was getting up legally, mind you. He found a really nice spot for it when TJ was legal to be kicked, and he threw what would normally be a leg kick, but because of TJ's positioning vertically, it wound up catching him in the chin. That clearly rocked him a little bit. He followed up. TJ couldn't get out of the way of the punches, and
I never want to see this fight again. I want this to be over with. We have too many guys at bantamweight who are in line. And now Cejudo's going to act like he has a legit claim to a title shot, which arguably he does now.
He does. I mean, again, like I'm kind of on the same.
I'm not really okay with that either. And now Dillashaw believes he was wronged, and he's going to act like a bitter crybaby over this because he felt he was denied his rightful shot at flyweight. And
I mean, never mind the TJ's plan. Let's also be clear about this because I think TJ had brought it up. His plan, had he won, was to then call out Max Holloway.
I mean, look, fighters say garbage like that all the time.
No, I have no problem believing that's exactly what TJ would have done.
I don't think he would have.
I think if TJ had beaten Henry Cejudo, he would have laughed at all the flyweights on the mic, looked at Max Holloway sitting cage side, and said, "I'm going to be a champ. Your slow ass is next."
Whatever.
And then, I mean, bear in mind, if that fight ever happens, I think Holloway kicks his ass.
Cejudo's acting like and here's why Cejudo makes me angry. He's acting like the savior of the flyweight division when all he wants to do now is move up and fight for the bantamweight title. How does that keep the flyweight division going and stable? It doesn't.
It doesn't. I mean,
if Cejudo were to defend the title against Joseph Benavidez, okay, all right, let's keep it going. But he's not going to do that.
No, and it's a crying shame. I mean, I said it right after Cejudo won the belt.
We've killed two divisions, Robert.
We've put flyweight in a position where it's nearly dead, and I don't think we've killed bantamweight, but there's a definite possibility for log jamming.
We're poisoning bantamweight now because of this mess. This fight never should have been booked. It was a mistake from the get-go. And you want to know what? Part of this blame can be laid at Demetrius Johnson's feet. He should have fought TJ when it was available. He probably would have gotten a nice payday out of that, but he said no.
I mean, look, if he'd rather fight contenders than fight TJ, this is one of those things that I think we're going to wind up applying too much current knowledge to hindsight.
Look, there weren't a lot of ready-made contenders at flyweight. Come on.
At the time that theory was being floated, it did make it. I didn't want to see it because of a lot of the same reasons I didn't want to see this.
Ray Borg was not a worthy contender. I'm sorry. He was not a contender.
TJ wasn't the champion at the time either.
Huh?
TJ wasn't the champion at the time.
But it would have shut TJ up because he would have gotten a title shot. And DJ, I think, probably would have won. I would have probably favored DJ in that fight.
At flyweight, had they fought, I still would have. No. I still would have leaned TJ. I still would.
I probably would have picked DJ at the time.
I mean, again, knowing what happened last night, yeah. But going back to where I was,
no reason for DJ not to take the fight with TJ. Honestly, other than he's never fought at flyweight before. But I mean, Ray Borg didn't exactly clean out the top 5 contenders to get a shot at the title. He was just another guy that was there who had a couple wins, had trouble making weight, and was available.
The other issue that DJ had with that fight was the compensation for it.
I'm sure they could have worked something out.
I mean, you'd like to think that, but that's one of his stated issues was, I will fight TJ. Here's the monetary compensation I want, and the UFC was balking at it. And look, that's fine. That happens in business all the time.
I think he meant it bantamweight.
I don't think he had a concern about TJ coming down to flyweight because DJ really wanted to break Anderson's record. And if TJ misses, he can't do it. And that's fair. If that was DJ's priority at the time, fine. That's on him.
He fought Ray Borg, and Ray Borg missed weight. He
had a history of missing weight. Yes, he had a history of making flyweight as well.
So that logic was moronic.
No.
Okay. Yes. No. Yes.
Borg had missed weight in the past. Yes. Borg had also made weight multiple times as well.
All right, and TJ
had never come anywhere close to flyweight.
And Ray Borg, when it came time to fight DJ, what happened?
He made weight.
No, he didn't. He missed weight the first time, remember? They had to push it back.
Yeah, he wound up making weight.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. By the skin of his teeth, I'm not going to pretend
No,
otherwise.
Robert, the first time the fight was supposed to happen, he pulled out. Remember?
No.
Yes.
I don't remember that. I'm not saying it
How
didn't
can we
happen.
not
I do
remember?
not remember specifically that sequence of events.
How can we not here?
Hang on. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm going to.
It was supposed to happen at 2:15. Fight was canceled the day before the event as Borg was forced to withdraw from the
Okay.
fight.
Oh yeah. Okay, I remember that now. Yeah.
And it was due to his weight cut. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, he had illness due to his weight. Yeah. Okay, I remember that now.
Okay.
I just forgot about that.
And he had already missed weight once before. So DJ's logic was far from sound. He should have just taken the fight with TJ Dillashaw. It's not the UFC's responsibility to make sure he can do a victory lap into breaking the record. I'm sorry.
No, it's not. And it's also not DJ's job to accommodate their desire to have TJ be a big star.
It's sort of like this attitude where Ariel Juan is like, oh no, I don't want Rose to fight in Brazil. She shouldn't have to fight in the home turf of a Brazilian.
No, those are two. Hang on. Those are two different things. Look, if DJ wanted to had a priority, then that's on him, and he negotiated with the UFC, and they came to an amenable sense of terms. There's not a third party argument to be made there.
DJ should have taken, for the reasons I've stated, Ray Borg was not a legitimate contender for the belt. TJ had never missed weight. His management probably could have negotiated a nice payday for him. He should have done that fight.
Look, if they could have come to financial terms, he would have done it.
It was the biggest fight he could have had for the title.
In some respects, yes, that was absolutely the biggest fight he could have been in. By the same token, big is a nebulous concept. If being in a big fight doesn't actually affect your paycheck, who cares?
Well, it might have.
I mean, again, that's why look, don't get me wrong. That's why you negotiate these things. I'm not saying
it's not a
broad-based condemnation.
I don't know what was on the table.
No, me neither. And the only thing I know is however they tried to negotiate it, it didn't work.
Now we know apparently they did offer Faber versus Dillashaw at one point. God, and I think Faber said no.
What a terrible decision that would have been.
Well,
anyway.
Well, I'm not happy. Talk about a fustercluck. We're dealing with that right now.
Yeah, there's a lot of this does muddy the waters a little bit going forward.
If Henry, stop acting like a hero of flyweight. If all you want to do is move up, I'm sorry.
No, that's very fair.
You want to be the hero. You want to be the hero of flyweight. Cejudo campaigned to fight Joseph Benavidez to keep flyweight going. That's how you be a hero.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I hate that this muddies the waters around, again, bantamweight, because you have a very clear-cut number one contenders fight in a few weeks between Marlon Moraes and Rafael Assunção.
Was arguably already the clear-cut number one contender before this whole mess.
Had you given Moraes the title shot, I wouldn't have complained. But the fact that he did lose a close split decision officially, that bear in mind, I do think he won to Assunção, and Assunção is actually 1-1 with TJ. It just
and then he beat 3 other top fighters, didn't he?
Yes, he beat Dodson, then he finished Sterling and Rivera. So yeah, 3. Again, don't get me wrong. If they'd given it to Moraes, I wouldn't have complained.
Those are top 5 contenders, are they not? At least Rivera.
Dodson, I don't think Dodson was. Sterling was top 10. Rivera was top 5. I want to see where
Sterling is right now.
Right now I think he's still top 10.
Sterling's right now he's number 7. Rivera's number 5.
Rivera was number 3. Rivera was 3 or 4 when he and Moraes fought. That was number 3 versus number 4. Dotson's
8. So he has 3 top 10 wins.
How is Dodson still 8?
After losing a close split decision to a guy to the number 3.
Yeah, he lost a close split decision to a guy that literally no one looks good
against.
And
Cruz shouldn't even be ranked right. Cruz shouldn't even be ranked right now.
No. Look, as long as it's been since he fought and that he's injured again, Cruz should not be ranked.
Yeah, I'm just not happy about any of these developments.
I mean, we're going to have to see how things play out over the next couple of weeks, but yeah, it's...
Thanks for nothing, Cejudo and Dillashaw.
I mean, I'm not going to say thanks for nothing because...
Maybe not nothing, but just, thanks for ruining 2 divisions.
Thanks for tying up 2 divisions even longer, guys. Yeah, that's fair. Again, as far as the 32-second fight goes, it's funny. This was the debut main event for the UFC on the ESPN networks. I'll include the streaming service there. Mm-hmm. And it goes 30 seconds. The debut fight for UFC on Fox, Velasquez versus Dos Santos 1, went like 1 minute and 5 seconds.
Well,
there seems to be a little bit of a curse going on there.
That's not, you know what? To me, that in itself isn't a curse.
No. Okay, let me rephrase. Okay, curse is the wrong word. There's a bit of a trend, and in fairness to that point, this event was much better from a presentation standpoint than the UFC's debut on Fox, where they spent an hour just talking.
I got to be honest. To me, the idea that a fight ends in a surprisingly quick knockout, to me, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not always, and in some cases, it's a really good thing. Roy Jones, I can't remember if it was senior or junior, has had a very famous quote about this. If you're fighting someone you really respect and are borderline afraid of, go out there and try to spark them as fast as possible, because then you are so unlikely to ever have to fight them again. If you want a few examples, Nunes and Cyborg. Nunes went out there, and the way she did that, in addition to her not wanting to go back to featherweight, apparently, it kind of removes a lot of the interest in the rematch. Aldo and Swanson. When those two fought, Jose Aldo decided to throw a flying double knee and knock Cub Swanson out in what should have been 3 seconds. That was
totally different. Swanson was really just a stepping stone for Aldo at that point.
Well, sure, but also at the time, Swanson did ask some interesting questions of Jose based on all available knowledge and style, and Aldo just, again, flying kneed him into oblivion.
Swanson was still the dude who got submitted by Jens Pulver.
Oh yeah, that was true.
He was nowhere close to becoming the legit contender he would later on.
No, that's true. But even now, look how many years later, we've never even heard rumor of a rematch.
Swanson's come close a couple times.
But again, every time it gets brought up, there's a lot of it ended in 8 seconds last time and should have been less.
Cejudo's demanding a rematch because now he wants the bantamweight belt, and Dillashaw felt he was denied his rightful fight. So
in TJ's mind, he's still undefeated. Look, TJ thinks the ref screwed him when he fought John Dodson. He doesn't think he lost the first Austin South fight. He doesn't think he lost the Cruz fight. And he doesn't think he lost this fight. There's a lot of self-delusion that goes into professional athletics.
Defend your bantamweight title, move on.
Yeah, look, there was a really nice photojournalist piece out on ESPN, actually, about TJ's weight cut. He looks like Christian Bale in The Machinist. He made the weight, and credit to him for that. But this is very. Even walking to the cage, he didn't look good. This is very clearly not his optimal performing weight class.
You ever see that 1996 film based on a Stephen King book, Thinner?
No, I haven't seen the movie, but I have read the book.
He looked like that.
I'll have to look it up. I'll take your word for it, but. Yeah, he did not look good. He didn't even look good walking to the cage. His arms just looked.
Surprised Dillashaw and his team let that stuff get out.
Yeah, in minor fairness to that point, if you did that same kind of piece around a lot of fighters, they look similar.
Well, I mean, we've seen stuff like that about Darren Till, Cyborg, before fights they won, but it's still not a good look.
No.
There was a lot of debate about bad optics going into this fight. To me, bad optics was that photo of T.J. Dillashaw during his weight cut. That was bad optics.
Yeah, we'll see what comes out of it. I mean, there's going to be I imagine there will be a lot of discussion about, again, how did the weight cut affect his performance?
I mean, that's all they talked about on the post-fight show on ESPN Plus.
I didn't watch it, so I'll take your word for it.
That's pretty much all I mean, Bisping, Bryant, and Rashad, that's all they talked about. They basically, whether it was or not, that's basically the reason they credited for TJ's loss.
Which is kind of a shame because it ignores the good things Cejudo did. I mean, again, 30 seconds. There's only so much tape to analyze.
Bisping poses about how he's nice and filled out, and Bryant talked about there was some lip service about, looking nice and filled out at a higher weight and some other stuff. It was a little silly at times, but whatever.
It's that analyst desk after a 6-hour event. Yeah, they're going to be silly.
Yeah.
But again, we don't know what's going to happen going forward yet. Again, Jeff mentioned TJ says he wants to fight again at flyweight, which is asinine. Cejudo apparently wants to go up to bantamweight and become a champ. I hate that nomenclature, but such is life. Which I'm not all that interested in necessarily, but
Daniel Cormier, he's the one who basically started that. No.
Look, Cormier has a second house located between Henry Cejudo's legs. Like, he lives on that man's nuts.
I mean, they're Olympic wrestlers.
They were on the same team.
Okay, there you go.
They were on the same Olympic wrestling team. They have a long history with each other. I don't begrudge him.
People are biased toward their friends.
They are. And again, I don't necessarily begrudge him that in some weird esoteric sense. Like, you have your friends. If your friends are fighting, you're going to nut hug a little bit. I get it. I don't like it, but I do understand it.
Hey, good for Henry Cejudo, because he's probably well on his way toward a Hall of Fame run.
I mean, think about this for just a second. Not just you, but anyone listening. In back-to-back fights, somewhat controversially, fair enough, but in back-to-back fights, Henry Cejudo defeated Demetrius Johnson and T.J. Dillashaw.
Yeah.
That is a monumental accomplishment.
Right.
Again, I don't like the idea of him going back up, and because if he wins at bantamweight, the UFC can just, oh hey, you're the bantamweight champion now, no more flyweights.
Yeah.
But we'll see. Again, we'll have to wait and see what happens with some of this. But again, credit to him, man, because a lot of people, myself included, didn't give him much of a chance in this fight.
He's still the first Olympic gold medal wrestler to win a UFC title.
He's the first Olympic gold medalist of any kind to win a UFC title.
Not first Olympic medalist to win a title, but first Olympic gold medalist to win a UFC title.
He was the first Olympic champion and UFC champion.
Right. So
I mean, we've had other medalists in different things, but
that's a pretty distinct honor.
That is, man. And the fact, I mean, he was inducted into the National Wrestling Hall of Fame prior to his fight with DJ, which he absolutely deserves. Dude's got a hell of a resume going on right about now.
He's on his way.
All right, next up in our co-main event. I spent so much time thinking about the points of maximal chaos related to the main event that I really should have thought about the co-main a little bit more. Because I don't know that I would have arrived at this situation, but I probably would have been close.
What a perfect ending to this fight.
Alan Crowder defeats Greg Hardy via DQ in the second round when Hardy basically knocked him out with an illegal knee. I mean,
I'll say this one thing to defend Greg Hardy. We've seen more people call this a rookie mistake. We've seen more experienced and seasoned veterans throw fouls and illegal knees like this.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let me say this about this situation. Yes, I think it is
Eddie
largely a
Alvarez,
rookie mistake.
Eddie Alvarez did it to Poirier.
Bisping did it to Jorge Rivera.
Yep. Even though the fight was not, that was not a disqualification.
Should have been, but Rivera was too tough for his own good.
Blatant foul. It was a blatant foul.
Horribly blatant. That was like, really, if I was ever a fan of Bisping, and I can't remember my fandom at various points, the way he handled that just killed it for me.
Also, Charles Oliveira and Nick Lentz.
Well, yeah, this does happen. Like, and that's one of the things. Like, I'm
not regularly, but it has happened with more experienced fighters.
And frankly, it happens a lot more when you get guys of the experience level of Greg Hardy. I mean, Greg Hardy was 3-0 coming into this fight. He was 3-0 as an amateur, but he'd been fighting for like 2, maybe 3 years. There's a level of real-time sophistication that goes into this, especially once you get out of your comfort zone.
Here's my thing about Greg Hardy. I'm not saying he should never be in the UFC ever, but I don't think he should be in the UFC right now.
I would agree with that. I mean, look, setting aside the finish, this was just a bad fight.
Right. Well, like, he's what, 3 fights into his pro career, or 4 now?
4 now.
So now he's 3-1. People are like, he doesn't have a lot of experience. Well, I don't think UFC is the best place to build your experience for an MMA career.
It's not, especially not being thrust into high-profile situations like this immediately. I mean, Cain Velasquez debuted when he was, I think, 3-0.
2-0.
2-0 in the UFC, yeah, because no one would fight him. But he didn't start in the co-main event of a major, in the co-main event of a pretty high-profile fight. He started in the prelims, where you should.
Cain Velasquez, was a highly decorated NCAA Division I wrestler.
He had a good wrestling background,
and he was already a seasoned combat sports veteran. And football is a very athletic sport, especially the NFL, but it's not a combat sport.
No, it is not. And I mean, look, this fight started sucking after about 30 seconds. Like, these are just low-level heavyweights, none of whom have a lot of technique, none of whom have cardio, none of whom have anything, really, apart from a bit of raw power. I mean, Greg Hardy spent like 3 minutes of this round on his back, and I still thought he won the round because Crowder did nothing from top position. I mean, this was just a bad fight. Greg Hardy should not be in the UFC at this point. He's not good enough.
Well, unfortunately, the Greg Hardy experiment is not over.
They'll probably give him one more, and it wouldn't shock me. But
I think they're gonna give him more than one.
I think it'll depend on the outcome of the war.
Look, I don't know what kind of numbers this show did, but
there's always come back. Let's come back to that after we get through the card, because there have been some numbers sort of released.
Got more attention than pretty much everyone else on this card.
Yeah, so. He was absolutely put in a high-profile position here.
They're going to keep him around for as long as they possibly can.
For as long as they can reasonably justify it, yeah, and I'll have to suffer through his fights. Because if he doesn't knock you out in 30 seconds...
I had to suffer through that, too.
Yeah, you could have saved yourself.
I was the one who was like, oh, man, we're out of the first round.
It's not just the first round. Like, with this level of heavyweight, you get maybe 90 seconds.
I feel like whenever someone says we don't need the judges for this one, or there's no way.
You're just tempting fate, man. Don't do it.
Whenever they promote, we're guaranteed to get a quick knockout here, it never happens. That's why you should never do that.
Just don't do it. You can, if you want to talk about both guys independently, fine, but just don't tempt fate like that, guys. You should know better. Again, it was just a bad fight. So I don't like bad fights.
Boom, heavyweights.
I mean, on the plus side, we have our early front runner for worst fight of the year, because this thing sucked. Moving on to good fights. Gregor Gillespie.
Here's my question about, did Greg Hardy throw that knee on purpose? Is he a dirty fighter?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, look, Michael Bisping throwing a knee at Jorge Rivera when Rivera's on both knees in front of him, that's a dirty move. Oliveira landing the illegal knee in transition because you can't really see, that happens. He should have known better, bear in mind, but we've seen crap like that, it happens. In this instance, I think you were just dealing with an inexperienced fighter. Not only inexperienced in number of fights, but inexperienced in how fighting really goes once you get out of, the first minute of a fight. Because Greg Hardy had not only knocked out all of his opponents in the first round, he'd done it within the first 2 minutes. I mean, he was just blitzing guys. And there's a degree of experience to what a long fight feels like that you only get by fighting long. I mean, we've seen plenty of fighters much better than Greg Hardy who drown that first time they get out of the first round or two. It happens. I think you were dealing with an inexperienced fighter who was gassed, who probably thought that Crowder was going to be faster getting up than he was, because Crowder got up to one knee before the illegal blow landed. If Hardy waits another second or two, that's a fair shot. I think this was a lot of inexperience in terms of time fighting. There's a lot of inexperience in terms of number of fights. It was a lot of inexperience in terms of knowing yourself and your body and your mind when you are physically exhausted, which is a whole different thing. You, me, everybody else, you are an entirely different human being when you are physically exhausted. And I think that all just kind of culminated for him. Again, based on the available evidence, I do not believe he is an intentionally dirty fighter, but we also have limited evidence, so I'm not going to, weigh in on that too heavily at the moment. But if you were looking at Greg Hardy's UFC debut and you wanted to script the point of maximal chaos, this is it. This is about it. I mean, it's just if you wanted to script it, okay, he comes out, he looks decent for 30 seconds, he looks like crap for a round, and he gets DQ'd for an illegal knee. Let's just see where the pieces fall. Well,
we can always get more grandstanding if he does continue to fight, and that's always fun.
Yeah, fun.
Moral grandstanding, that is.
We'll see. All right. Next up, this was fun. Gregor Gillespie, baby, defeats Yancy Medeiros via TKO, 4:59 of the second round.
Look, we got to start talking about Gregor Gillespie being a potential contender, man. Because
he is at a minimum the prospect to watch in that division right now, and rapidly becoming a contender.
He really needs to be in a top 5, if not very close to a top 5 fight next.
Yeah, I need to pull.
No, you know what? No. He needs to fight a top 5 guy for his next fight.
Who are the top 5 guys right now?
I'll
bring them up. Hang on.
Ferguson.
We have Khabib, Tony, Dustin, probably Connor because reasons.
Kevin Lee, maybe. Oh no, Iakenta. There you go. Iakenta, you're not getting a fight with McGregor. Sorry.
No, that we're actually going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. Yeah, you could do Iakenta, Barboza and Gaethje. Oh, I got chills, man, thinking about that fight. We'll get to that in a minute. If you wanted to do someone more towards the number 10 spot, you could. I don't know where Gillespie's going to land after this performance because the rankings aren't updated yet. Because Hernandez is going to drop. He's going to rise. You could do him and Vic. I don't know. Pettis is maybe leaving the division, so let's count him out.
Barboza.
Barboza and Gaethje are fighting, and I am just going to have a violent orgasm.
Fight the winner of that, or he could fight Iakenta.
Yeah.
Or Kevin Lee.
Him and Lee would be interesting because they're both such good grapplers.
Yeah.
But yeah, Gregor just Medeiros, I think, landed all of two.
Gillespie is he's a Division I champion.
Yeah.
And he is translated very well to the MMA space.
Got that year that I can't remember if it was the year he won or just one of the years that he was competing. The bracket he competed in also featured it also featured Gaethje, Olympic gold medalist Jordan Burroughs, and
wow,
there was somebody else too. Like it was a ridiculously stacked. That man competed opposite some unbelievably gifted wrestlers.
Fight again right away, but his next fight should be a very big fight.
Yeah,
my feeling.
At a minimum, a significant step up in competition because while Yancey's not a can, he was also just returning to lightweight.
Yeah, but Yancey's he's a tough opponent, but he's a journeyman.
Yeah, he definitely needs to fight a ranked opponent next, if nothing else, because he ragdolled Yancey. As soon as he got close distance and got his hands locked, Yancey couldn't break his grip and just got mat returned over and over and beat up and positionally dominated. I mean, credit to Yancey.
He's not just grinding guys, he's finishing them.
He has the longest active finishing streak in the UFC.
Kamaru Usman, I mean, he's the grinder, and they even had to give him a title shot at some point. I don't know if Gillespie becomes champion, but I think he very will.
He'll be in the picture sooner rather than later.
It's just, look, the lightweight title picture is a mess now, but
at the moment,
with all these new legacy belts we have, we could be having more interim fights sooner or later. So there you go.
It's entirely possible, but yeah, Gregor keeps rolling. Again, longest active finish streak in the UFC right now is Gregor Gillespie.
Right.
So be aware of that, man.
He's putting the work in, man.
And God willing, one day in the future, there will be a fishing show hosted by Gregor Gillespie and Kyoji Horiguchi.
Yeah, he's a humble dude, and he fights like an animal.
Yeah.
He's well-rounded.
Yeah, he's getting there.
I would say he's fairly well-rounded.
He's not one-dimensional.
He submitted Gonzalez and Pichel, and he knocked out Rinaldi and Medeiros.
Yeah, but if memory, weren't those both arm triangles? The submissions.
Yes, they were.
Which is a very wrestler-friendly submission, and both of those, and all of his finishes by strikes have been on the ground, which is still nothing to sneeze at.
He's undefeated. Of his 13 wins, he has 5 submissions, 6 knockouts. He's got more finishes.
He's only been the distance twice.
Right.
And one of those was his UFC debut against relatively underappreciated Glyco Franca.
In Brazil. Brazil. So,
went down to Brasilia and beat up a Brazilian. Right. Yeah, pay attention to Gregor Gillespie, guys.
Which is a reason why it's stupid to be all like Rose can't fight or win in Brazil or something.
I agree. Joseph Benavidez and Dustin Ortiz had a darn good flyweight fight.
It was okay.
If you like wrestling, and I mean actual wrestling, not the MMA conception of wrestling, this was great.
Ortiz had his moments in this fight. I think he could have won. I feel like he could have won this.
He was close. They were one apiece going into the third. Benavidez looked to be fading. Then he just made a mistake in transition, and Benavidez got his back for long enough to definitively win the third round.
I feel like Ortiz could have won this if he just was a little more active. Did a little more.
Again, it's not activity because it just comes down to that one round.
Right.
Because Benavidez clearly takes the first. Which is not to say Ortiz didn't have success in the first, but that was Benavidez's round. Ortiz takes the second, and then, again, he just winds up a little bit too much forcing of grappling exchanges, and then he winds up getting his back taken, and while Benavidez doesn't do anything with it, having your back taken for a significant period of time is a difficult scoring deficit to overcome, and he just wasn't able to do it.
For Benavidez, he's in, can you be in a worse position than him right now and fighting in the UFC?
Yes, but it's hard to get there.
For him to be such a tough, he's legitimately the top contender at flyweight right now.
Yes.
Yet he has multiple strikes against him because his last fight with Cejudo was not a good fight, and no one wants to see it again.
It was a good fight. It just was marred by elements of controversial officiating.
All right. Well, he's unlikely to get a title shot because of that. The champion of his division.
Well, he's unlikely to get a title shot because he got beat by Sergio Pettis 2 fights ago.
Well, the champion of his division.
And Cejudo doesn't want to fight at flyweight.
Yes, doesn't want to fight him at flyweight. You would think Cejudo would want to fight the guy who has a win over him, you know?
You would think.
To get that win back.
I mean, frankly, I'd favor Cejudo in a rematch.
Benavidez had to fight last night at flyweight. He's apparently re-upped at flyweight in a division that likely has very little to no future. And yet he's arguably the top contender in the division right now. It just sucks. And he's not getting a title shot anytime soon. It sucks for him.
It does not appear likely that he's getting a title shot in the near future.
I mean, look at his record. He has
Benavidez is an all-time great.
Yeah.
He's just struggled because at bantamweight he was undersized, visibly undersized, and still had a lot of success. And then at flyweight, he just ran up against the one guy.
He's 8-1 in 9 fights. That's pretty impressive. He's 8-2 in 10 fights.
His only losses are to Cruz, Johnson, and Cejudo. Or not Cejudo, and Pettis. That's it. I mean, he is a great fighter.
And the Pettis fight was a split decision.
It shouldn't have been split. Pettis won that fight.
Okay. And Pettis,
the only way to score that fight for Benavidez is to massively overvalue walking forward and missing punches and getting countered.
Pettis has already moved back up.
Yeah. If Pettis, again, I don't dispute that Cejudo is the clear number 1 contender at flyweight. I
mean, just be straight with Benavidez. This man has been a loyal soldier for you for years.
Not only that, he's one of the nicest guys in the sport.
Either tell him he needs to move up and pursue bantamweight, or let him, give him the information he needs so he can make his decision on his career.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that sentiment. But a good fight, all things considered. They had some really fun wrestling exchanges. There were a lot of great submissions, submission attempts, scrambles. I had a lot of fun with this fight. The only other fight on the main card, apart from the co-main
fight, honestly,
I didn't care for this next fight at all.
I liked it.
I mean, at all. Paige Van Zandt defeats Rachel Ostovich via armbar in the second round. I really don't know how I want to approach this because
I thought Van Zandt had some good scrambles here.
No, she had one good scramble.
All right.
Bear in mind, it led to her winning the fight, so it's the most relevant scramble. But
she was easily taken down whenever Ostovich wanted her there. So that's
God, it was so easy for Rachel to take her down. And Paige's striking has somehow gotten worse. Like, she's literally looking at the freaking ceiling when she's punching. It is so bad. And she got taken down. She got controlled. Her entire game plan from the bottom is just stall out and pray for a stand-up.
She's had back-to-back broken arms. She hasn't won since 2016. Maybe this will help her. I don't know.
It's not going to hurt. Like, winning very rarely hurts.
I don't know. Maybe she's still not comfortable fighting with her broken arm.
I mean, that wouldn't affect elements of her. That wouldn't affect the elements of her mechanics that bothered me. I mean, like, if you're hesitant about throwing the arm.
She started very strong in the UFC, then hit a few roadblocks, had the arm injuries, and now she's got to win. Maybe that'll boost her confidence again.
Hey, look, she's at flyweight. The UFC can finally make Van Zandt versus Joanna.
Oh, Oh, no. Do not make that fight, please.
I kind of want to see it.
No.
Because I'm a terrible person who loves bloodshed.
You are a terrible person to want.
Hey, I just said I about had a violence-related orgasm when I saw that Justin Gaethje and Edson Barboza are going to fight.
Do you hate Paige Van Zandt and her husband that much?
I don't hate Paige Van Zandt.
Yeah, you do.
I do not.
You wanted to murder her.
There's a lot of people I would like Joanna to murder. Let's be clear about that. That list is not that's not exclusive to Paige.
All right.
But I mean, look, the UFC, they were kind of angling for that fight pretty clearly at strawweight for a while, and now Joanna's lost at flyweight. Joanna's only 1-3 in her last 4.
I thought Van Zandt had some good submission attempts in here. I thought that rolling leg lock sequence looked pretty cool.
Oh God, I'm torn on that because I appreciate the initiative, but none of those were close. Like anytime she went for the straight knee bar, Rachel's knee was past her hips, and then there's no leverage. All of the heel hook attempts it ignored the fundamental, like what makes a heel hook work is your ability to control the opponent's other hip. Like the hip, whatever leg you're attacking, you have to control the other hip side so that they can't roll out of it. That's what gives you the torque necessary to finish it. And she was obviously neglecting that. So again, I appreciate the initiative she showed going for it, but there's a lot of mechanical stuff that desperately needs to be shored up there. I mean, even the armbar she got the finish with wasn't the best. If Rachel had attempted a different escape, she would have been fine. I mean, what caused the whole thing to happen was Van Zandt got too high on the back, and when you get too high on the back, there's a couple of things you can do. One of which is you try to strip one of their legs out with you can either just strip the post, one of the legs that they're posting on, and return them to the mat, or you can try to roll through with a Sulawev stretch, which is what that move is actually designed for initially. Is if you get too high on the back and they're trying to brace up, you grab that leg, roll forward, and then just yank back on the hamstring. It's a terrible technique. Bear in mind, terrible to be in. It's beautiful to watch. One of the other things you can do is, if you're going to fall off and you know you're going to fall off, screw it, try an armbar. And that's kind of what she wound up doing. And then Rachel's only defense, again, she just tried to base up and then shake Van Zandt off, which was not the appropriate thing to do in that situation. I think if she had tried, if she'd gotten her posture under her better, because part of the problem was as Van Zandt committed to the armbar, Ostovich's balance was off, so she wound up collapsing onto her own arm, which led to her elbow getting 8 kinds of screwed up. So her posture wasn't entirely correct. She didn't try to move her legs at all. Like I feel like there was a hitchhiker escape there, though I could be mistaken. That would have been a better choice to try and defend that position, and she would have wound up on top. So just one of the reasons I didn't really care for this fight was it looked like a lot of other low-level MMA that I've seen. And some of that's just kind of natural given that Rachel is inexperienced. I mean, she's a 4-5 fighter. And that Van Zandt has taken so much time off. There's only so much skill progression you're going to get when you're taking time off to do all the other stuff she's done. And bear in mind, I don't begrudge her that either. If you want to capitalize on getting paid to do something other than get punched in the face, by all means, go for it. But there was just a lot of relatively obvious errors both fighters were making that I can't help but watch them and go, anyone who's a little bit better than the level you two are at is going to destroy you over these.
Well, look, going into this fight, Rachel Ostovich was a 4-4 fighter.
Yep.
1-1 in the UFC. She's not exactly...
Not a seasoned vet by any stretch of the imagination.
Not exactly what I would call a high-level opponent. Not like a Michelle Watterson type.
I mean, there's even an argument about the specific level of opposition that Watterson represents at this point. And Van Zandt couldn't overcome that, despite having a massive size advantage, because Michelle's a natural 115 or 105er. But, Van Zandt got back on the winning side of things, so good for, I mean, again, my overly critical nature, setting that aside, good for her getting back on the winning side of things. Again, apparently Rachel's elbow is pretty severely damaged after that finish, so.
I mean, that was a nasty armbar, and
there was a singular nasty moment in it, and that's really all it takes.
Credit to Paige for recognizing the tap, and she didn't like wrench it back or hold on to it too long.
Yeah, she felt the tap that the referee couldn't see because of the positioning everyone was in. I mean, and in fairness, this wasn't the ref being grossly out of position. Rachel's free hand, the one she wound up using
angle.
to tap, was trapped between them. Like, it was a weird spot.
It was the angle.
Yeah. And kicking off the main card, Glover Teixeira defeated Carl Robertson via arm triangle choke in the first round.
And Teixeira almost got blitzed in that first round.
He went out for a second or two there. You can see it. He goes in for a double leg. Robertson goes to those elbow strikes that you get with the head outside single.
Almost gets a stunning upset and then just lets it totally get away from him.
I mean, it was the craziest thing in the world. He floors him with these elbows. You can see Teixeira go limp a couple of times. Like, had they stopped it, I don't think I would have complained. It was like that. Gets full mount with an arm trapped, and Teixeira just kind of he-mans his way through it because, and winds up reversing position, getting on top, gets full mount, gets the arm triangle. I have a lot of fun at the expense of Glover Teixeira in a lot of ways.
He's a battle-tested veteran,
Dude's 39 years old, and he is still out there in the trenches overcoming barrages like this and turning back the young guys. Serious credit to that man.
He must be on the gear.
Wouldn't shock me. Some credit to Robertson for taking this fight. He's normally a middleweight and took this on short notice after Iwan Kutelaba fell out. And again, Robertson had moments of success. I'm a little more concerned with the fact that he wound up giving up, losing from the dominant position that he had. But he's also a younger fighter, and Teixeira's again a war horse at this point. But, so credit to Glover, man, doing it for the old guys. The fact that he made a joke about Cerrone, because Cerrone, after he won, and we'll get to his fight in a minute, mentioned that, this was like his 30th some odd. This might have been his 40th fight under the Zuffa banner, under the,
it was
the Zuffa.
40th, yeah.
You can't just say Zuffa anymore, but between Zuffa's time owning the WEC and now his time in the UFC. And Cerrone actually specifically said, the old man can still get it done. And after Glover won, he said, I know Cowboy said the old man can still get it done. I'm 39 and I'm still out here. The old man can definitely still get it done.
Right. Good for him.
And as a guy over 30 myself, I appreciate that.
These guys they are beating much younger guys. Let's see, Robertson is 28. And
11 years younger.
Yeah. Hernandez is 26. So, experience does count for something in this.
It does. It absolutely does. Let's move on. I know this was on, again, the prelims, but I do want to devote some time to Cerrone versus Hernandez because...
Talk about this one. Pat Mullen, Pat Mullen on here was riding Cerrone off not long ago.
Yeah, Cerrone's kid being born seems to have reignited a lot of his fire. And, parenthood will do that to you.
Well, he did have a rough stretch, but look, one was a close fight with Robbie Lawler. One was not. He was knocked out by Darren Till, who's freaking huge. And
frankly, the troubling fight that he lost in that stretch is the Edwards fight more than the others.
That wasn't an insane, he got destroyed or starched kind of thing.
He didn't get finished, but the reason that fight is the troubling one for me from a technical perspective,
right?
Leon Edwards was clearly just ready for literally everything Cerrone does in a fight. Because Cerrone does the same things that he's done for the last 5 years.
Cerrone has problems like that. He's had problems like that at lightweight.
Well, and again, like a lot.
And then he just destroyed Mike Perry.
Yeah, and well,
made Mike Perry look like a dud.
it doesn't take much to make Perry look like a dud.
All right.
I mean, look, Perry's binary. He either has a glorious violent-related knockout, or he looks like a sparring partner.
But look, whether it was justified for him to be that high up in the rankings or not, Cerrone just knocked out the number 11 ranked guy at lightweight. So, and Cerrone, I think he does have a legit argument when he was basically number 2 when he went up the division.
Yeah, he was top 5 if nothing else.
Because he had just had an 8-1 run. The one loss was the title fight with Rafael dos Anjos.
Yep.
But going into that fight, he beat Eddie Alvarez in his UFC debut.
Yep.
And Eddie Alvarez then went on a run to become champion after that loss. And he beat the former champion Benson Henderson, who had beaten him twice before earlier in their careers in the WEC in title fights, in 5-round title fights.
Yeah, he won that fight.
I mean, the second fight was a fight, but he beat Benson Henderson in their third fight. I mean,
my issues with the scoring in that fight aside,
he won that fight. I'm sorry.
I have to remember if I agree with that or not.
I think I scored that fight for. I mean, it wasn't a huge emphatic victory, but I think it was a victory. That was like the best run of his career, and he just came up short against the champion. And then he moved up, and he had a fairly decent run at welterweight too until
he had a good run at welterweight
until he fought George Masvidal.
God, that was a bad loss for him.
I don't think Cerrone's ever going to become champion, but I think you do have to make a legitimate argument for him being a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
because
Cerrone is one of the best guys to never win a UFC belt.
We have guys in the Hall of Fame who aren't necessarily championship level in every Hall of Fame for every sport.
Yes.
You're not always going to be. It's not always a championship run that determines if you're Hall of Fame worthy. And Cerrone has, I feel like, he has the most wins in the octagon right now, right?
Most wins and most finishes.
I mean, that does count for something, don't you agree?
Oh, yeah.
So, and I feel like he could still go for maybe not another 10 fights, but maybe, let's say 5 to 8, at least.
5, almost certainly.
And I think he's aware of that. He's aware of that. But he moved back down, and he beat a young buck who was ranked. And I think that, I think it just says a lot about Cerrone's resiliency. And I don't know. As I said before, experience does count for something. Now that Cerrone is one of the older fighters.
In fairness, he's been one of the old war horses for about 3 years now.
Yeah.
And I don't say that with any disrespect. Like, that guy's been around and fights a lot.
I know he's talking a lot about wanting to become champion. I just don't see it happening. Because I can't
give him an edge over the top guys at lightweight. I mean, I would love to see him fight Khabib or Tony.
It's just that he's so inconsistent.
Look, the book's written on Cerrone, right?
Yeah.
Like, Cerrone has done. He's fought the same way basically for the last 4 years.
Right.
And bear in mind, as often as he fights, there's only so much shifting that's going to occur in your skill set and your game planning and whatnot. But if you look, again, I bring up the Edwards fight specifically, watch Cerrone versus Edwards. Edwards has a counter for every attack and every position that they find themselves in, and Cerrone never adjusts because...
Well, look, look, Cerrone just doesn't show up sometimes.
That happens too, yeah.
I mean,
some of it's him. I think a lot of it is just.
Henderson. Did you watch his second fight with Henderson at
Oh yeah, Henderson got him in that guillotine almost immediately.
He looked like he didn't even know. He looked like he got in there and froze and didn't even know what to do. and that and it happened to him a remarkable, maybe not a lot, but it happened to him when he gets in these big fight situations, you know?
Yep.
And that's kind of why I can't predict him to win a title fight. But
I mean, would you pick him over Tony Ferguson?
no, never.
Would you pick him over Khabib?
No.
Would you pick him over Poirier?
Poirier, I think, would be a closer fight for him.
Yeah, I'd agree with. Oh God, I just said that. Now I can't stop thinking about it.
That
would be so fun.
Well, I'd be fine if Conor wants this fight and Cerrone wants this fight. I would be fine with that.
Yeah.
Just to me, anything to keep Conor out of a title picture.
Yeah, after because Cerrone called out Conor, I think, after his last fight, right. And then after this one, Conor actually responded to him.
They were talking about each other a lot when the word was Conor was going to move up.
Yeah, I am very interested in that fight.
I'd be fine with that fight. I think Cerrone has as good a chance of. I mean, look, I think Conor is very beatable, and I think on a good night, I think Cerrone could beat Conor.
Yeah, I think Cerrone's absolutely got a chance in that fight.
I think if he doesn't, try to brawl with Conor and maybe uses his grappling game, which is very good. He does have a great ground game. I
wish his takedowns were better, man.
I mean, I would probably pick Conor in that fight, but I think he has his, I think he.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'd lean towards Conor, but
win. I think he could find ways to win. Just because, again, I think Conor's a very beatable opponent, and I think we've seen that with the Diaz and the Khabib fights.
Yeah, again, there's some pretty exploitable holes in Conor's game, and there's exploitable ones in Cerrone's, and it would be very interesting to see who was able to kind of capitalize first on that. Again, this was an interesting fight because Hernandez came out and capitalized in a lot of respects on Cerrone's slow start. Cerrone didn't start as slow as he has in the past. It only took him about 3 minutes to get going. Because frequently in the past, it's been a whole round.
I mean, we say Cerrone's a slow... He doesn't always start slow. It's not like clockwork, I would say.
No, it's a reliable assumption, but it's not a guarantee. And again, once he got going, Hernandez couldn't really adjust. Hernandez had some moments of success in this fight, but he couldn't really string anything together. I was most troubled by his footwork. A lot of his attacks were very linear.
Did he
did a lot of chasing?
Did he have an adrenaline dump here, or did he just blow his wad?
No, I think that's partially just how he fights at this point. He just does a lot of that storm. And I mean, against Dariush, he did it. Against Obama Mercier, he did it. He just comes out, and for those first couple of minutes, he's going to throw as much of the kitchen sink as he can at you.
That can work. It can work sometimes, but if a fighter weathers that storm, it can be very dangerous.
And that's a lot of what we got here was Cerrone. Again, Cerrone didn't have a good 3 minutes, but after that, he really kind of settled himself, started landing his counters, started finding things. I mean, Hernandez would have been well served to actually add some feints into this game because anytime he was able to draw out Cerrone's counters, he had opportunities that he just then didn't capitalize on. By contrast, and I hate to bring this up again, but it's a really good textbook example of these things working against Cerrone. Leon Edwards, every time he feinted and Cerrone bid on it, he immediately then was able to capitalize on the opening presented. By contrast here, Hernandez got Cerrone to throw the intercepting knee a couple of times and miss. He just with fakes, but after Cerrone throws it and he's on one leg, Hernandez has nothing to capitalize on the opportunity.
Cerrone wants a big fight next. Who could it be?
I'm fine with Cerrone and McGregor. I really am.
Well,
I think that has some really good ingredients to it.
Well, they have to resolve the Nevada suspension and work.
Well, that would be nice if they could do that.
Freaking Nevada. dragging their feet there. I don't know what's going on.
I know. That's what kills me about it. Like, I don't like the situation, but stop making it worse by...
I mean, Ally Akinta wants McGregor. I don't like that idea. I mean...
I like McGregor and Cowboy. I think that's a good fight.
I like that. I like the idea of that fight, too, because I want Conor out of the title picture. And it'd be a good fight for the fans, too. The fans would be totally on board with that fight. But I don't know. I don't know what happens there.
All right. As for the rest,
I want that fight, but I don't want. But whenever one of these events happen, they'll go yeah, let's do that fight, and then it either happens or it kind of just falls by the wayside, and they move on to something else. I don't know. We'll see.
Again, that's the fight I would like to see, but if that can't happen, God. Cerrone and Gaethje makes me so happy on paper.
I'd be fine with that, but Gaethje might want a big.
Oh no, we've got Gaethje and Barboza to deal with later, so.
I expect Gaethje to win that fight. I'm
not sure, man. I'm really not sure, but we'll get to it. I do want to talk about that. Yeah. As for the rest of this card, Joanne Calderwood defeated Ariane Lipski via unanimous decision. 2 30-26s. I'm not sure which round was 10-8 and a 30-27. Really disappointed in Lipski's performance throughout this fight. Just again, really let down. And credit to Calderwood for kind of rising to the occasion in a lot of respects. So, not the worst fight in the world. Calderwood called out Jessica Ai. Apparently, Jessica Ai is getting the next title shot because they decided to make women's flyweight an actual division. So there's that to look forward to. Not bad. Alonzo Menafield defeated Vinicius Mejia via TKO in the first round. At least it was short. Mejia with 3 of the worst spinning back kicks I've ever seen. And on the last one, Menafield just slipped to the side and popped him in the head. Menafield made this much more difficult on himself than he needed to be. He started headhunting, and the body of Mejia was fairly wide open. But, crappy light heavyweights. At least it was quick. Corey Sandhagen defeated Mario Batista via armbar in the first round. Pay attention to Sandhagen, guys. He's good. There's still a lot of development there. I don't know how good he's going to wind up being, but he's darn good. Good on the feet, good with his hands, good with body to head work. On the mat, he's good too. He has good top position. He has good rides. And in this instance, he got into, I've heard it referred to as jiu-jitsu speed chess, where not every submission attempt is technically perfect, but you chain them together and move between them so quickly that if your opponent isn't prepared for each of them, you're going to get them with something eventually. And in this instance, he got Batista with the armbar. Again, I'm not sure if I'm on the Corey Sandhagen bandwagon yet, but I'm jogging alongside, taking a look for spots. Those last 4 fights all took place on ESPN. Then the first set of prelims on ESPN Plus. Dennis Bermudez defeated T. Edwards via unanimous decision, 30-26 across the board, and then retired. Dennis Bermudez had been in the UFC since 2011. Jeez, yeah. Because, he was in the finals of that season of The Ultimate Fighter with Diego Brandao and got helicopter armbarred in the finals. Just never a world beater, never even really a contender necessarily, but a really solid all-around guy to just kind of be in the trenches and fill out your roster. So, solid enough win for him to go out in the state he now lives in. So, is he actually from New York? I know he's ethnically Puerto Rican, but I can't remember if was born there.
I believe he's from New York.
So many fights out of. Where was he born? I can't actually find that information. All right. Oh, he's American. Yeah. Okay, so at least one of his parents is Puerto Rican then, but yeah, he's from New York, so in his hometown. Oh no, there it is. Born in New York. Yeah. So you get to go out in very nearly your home city, certainly your home state like that. You don't get a lot of feel good moments like that, and he got one, so good for him. T. Edwards is a bit of a one-round wonder, I think. Anything at past the first round, he starts sucking wind. Jeff Neal defeated Bilal Muhammad via unanimous decision, 230-27s, 129-28. This went about as expected. These two had a fun fight. Neal's straight punches, in and out work, but Muhammad made a bit of a comeback as he started going to the body and pressing the action. He clipped Neal a couple of times. Again, there was a lot of good stuff in this particular fight, and kicking everything off. Chance Rencounter defeated Kyle Stewart via rear naked choke in the first round. Rencounter is just one of those wrestle all the time guys, and he really needs to expand his skill set if he wants to be something, but there's a degree of success that style and mentality will take you to in even the UFC. All right, and that was that. So, Jeff, any thoughts on any of those other fights? Any burning desires?
When Calderwood came back and looked good. Yeah?
Yeah.
She's now that she's back at flyweight, she's someone we have to keep a serious eye on now. She's picked up 2 solid wins in the last year. So, I mean, just all things considered, she could be a contender sooner rather than later.
I mean, women's flyweight is essentially embryonic at this point still.
Right. But I would say she's a natural flyweight, you know?
Yeah.
So
strawweight was clearly not her optimal weight class.
Correct. So now she finally has a weight class where she can comfortably compete and likely fight for a title. So good for her. You know I like JoJo. So
I do.
I was happy to see her. She's, back on the upside now.
Yeah, I don't know. What might they do with her next? Bring up women's flyweight here. Because apparently, I think they did announce they want to do I versus Shevchenko.
You could fight Nico Montano.
You could do Montano. You shot down my last one, but you could do JoJo and Joanna.
I don't really like that idea.
What else is there?
Does Joanna even stay at flyweight?
I don't know. I think I don't. I mean, that's where she's ranked right now.
I mean, if she wants to stay at flyweight, I mean, okay. I don't know if I like that for Joanna's next fight after losing to Shevchenko. Let's see. Definitely not Modafferi.
Yeah, you could do Alexis Davis, maybe.
I'd be fine with the Davis or a Carmouche.
Davis or Carmouche would make a lot of sense.
How are Davis and Carmouche even ranked that high? What is this been winning?
A combination of just general history and.
See, I'm trying to look at Davis's record.
She's coming off the loss to Chukagian, but she had won twice before that. I mean, one of those fights sucked out loud, mind you, but.
Let's see. Well, 1-1. I mean, it just seems so arbitrary to rank Davis so high,
Most of the women's flyweight rankings at this point are somewhat arbitrary. You don't have a lot of history in the division yet.
I mean, I feel like Joanne should be ranked higher because she actually has 2 flyweight wins, and
she'll be higher again when these update on like Monday or whatever.
I mean, it's the UFC ranking, so we can't hang our hats on that.
Okay, but she should be ranked higher, if nothing else.
Well, here's what we do. We want JoJo to get a big fight next, whatever it is. Maybe it's a Chukagian.
God, that would be so. That has potential to be so awful, but it might also be good.
Well,
I'm not a fan of Chukagian.
I think whatever she gets next, she's due for like a top ranked opponent.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would like to see her fight someone in the, kind of the 3 to 7 range. Just someone in that space
Where's
generally.
Jessica? Now, looking at Jessica if she's getting the next title fight.
I don't know if that had been like signed yet, but I know I had heard that floated.
That's what they're based on what Dana White like. I feel like that's what they're gonna do. And she's only 3-0 at flyweight since moving down to fly. I mean, it is, as you said, it's an embryonic division. Give JoJo a bigger fight next. That's what I want. I like JoJo.
All right. Again, that was Fight Night 143. Thanks to everyone who followed along live. Thanks to those of you who commented after the fact. I deeply appreciate it. I mean, this wasn't as bad as before as some of the other events where I have like, oh, hey, I have 5 minutes between fights. Let me go, spend a lot of time in the comments section. But I do try to get in there when I can. So a lot of thanks to you guys for the assistance you've been providing for that and just for your support. I felt rusty. Doing this one, so hopefully the next one's better. All right, on to news items.
Pettis versus Thompson.
Hang on, I wanted to start with the new title belts and see if you had any thoughts on those.
I mean, I guess I prefer the Zuffa era designs that they had for most of the Zuffa run. I don't think these look terrible, to be honest with you.
I didn't like the still shots that they had shown, but then when I saw it on Cejudo, I don't know, it worked a little bit better. Like seeing it kind of in essentially practice as opposed to just in theory.
I think the Infinity Gauntlet comparisons are amusing. I mean,
that's not the one that I saw was not an Infinity Gauntlet comparison. It was that belt in the center of like the white Power Ranger outfit from like the second gen Power Rangers, and then just Dana's face photoshopped onto.
I mean, I don't hate the new belts, but Cejudo didn't seem overly fond of the new designs last night.
It took me a little bit to figure out what I don't find aesthetically pleasing about them, and there's a few like really like minor technical things. Like there's some depth of space or negative space usage that I think could be different, but I think I'm just not a fan of. I don't know how to describe this. There's probably a very easy design term that I'm just unaware of, but I don't really care for when you like the watch, like the wristwatch design, where you have the band that comes and then flares into the big centerpiece and then goes narrow again.
Here's what I don't like. I don't like the open, like to me it should just be one big plate,
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. The some of the open space in there. I'm not a big fan of the exposed leather necessarily around the edges. So minor thing.
To me, it's the exposed spaces of the plate that I don't like.
Yeah, I can see that.
Here. I guess if there's another thing I don't like, let me see. Let me get a closer look. Kind of you have that kind of white inner rim, and then you go back to the gold. Yeah. I don't hate it, honestly.
No, I don't hate it, and I think it'll probably wind up growing on me a bit, but
I think, I guess I guess I just don't love that it's got kind of like those. Now I get the kind of the wristwatch thing, but whatever.
And again, that's largely personal. Like I much prefer.
Never been my favorite like title belts.
No, they really haven't. They've never had a really great design to them yet. Maybe in the future. All right. Announced fights. We got the main event for Fight Night 148. It is Anthony Showtime Pettis, the former lightweight champion and former interim featherweight title contender. No, wait, he missed weight for that. Featherweight competitor. Moving up to welterweight to fight the former two-time welterweight title contender, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
Hey.
All right. I mean, I'm torn on this one.
Okay.
Because on the one hand, it feels like a giant pile of meh.
Okay.
Like these are just two guys we don't really know what to do with.
Well,
and
isn't Thompson still basically a top 5 welterweight?
Yes. But he's also lost twice to the current champion, and one of those was a terribly received fight, and a pretty terrible fight generally. And Thompson is also lost to Darren Till.
Well, Thompson needs to bounce back, and this could be a good way for him to have an impressive performance over a longtime veteran.
Yeah, as for the fight itself, I'm also torn here because this could be fun. Like, you have two guys with a very flashy sense of offense in a lot of respects, and
when they utilize it.
Yes, you could also get a lot of staring.
I think he's upset because you declared you anointed Thompson as the next champion, and he never got it done.
That's true. I mean, I expect Thompson to win this fight. He has a significant size advantage over Pettis.
I mean, Pettis is not the guy he was 9 years ago.
No.
When he was such an impressive prospect.
God, he was so dynamic. In his heyday, Anthony Pettis was one of the most dynamic fighters you will ever see.
You know, once he finally got the title, I thought he was going to have it for a long time, honestly. After he beat, he submitted Melendez of all people, which never happened at that point. I really thought, okay, now he's really gonna hold this belt onto this belt for a while. I figured, but
and he just ran into one of the better technicians in MMA history in Dos Anjos and never bounced back.
Well, I mean, I wasn't really sold on Pettis until he beat Melendez, and then right after he beat Melendez, he lost the belt. So it's kind of the tough thing.
But I mean, that's just, again, much as I'm kind of unenthused about that fight right now, it's a perfectly serviceable main event for that type of card.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm fine making that if Pettis wants to move up.
I think Pettis is floundering for a.
I agree. I don't think Pettis could. I don't think Pettis has much time left in his career. No. I think he's just trying to. If he can reinvent himself, great. But I think he's just trying to find a way to lengthen his career because he just hasn't been looking good lately. Outside of the odd winner here or there, what was his last one? The Chiesa fight.
Yeah.
And then
he just got kind of steamrolled by Tony.
I mean,
steamrolled's the wrong word, but he got broken by Tony's pace and violence.
Even Oliveira, when he fought Oliveira and won that fight, he was having some problems. Oliveira was giving him some problems,
Oh, he struck the whole second round. He was in a really bad spot that whole round. I mean, he had a great first round. He crumpled Oliveira with body kicks.
It looked like Oliveira was turning that fight around in the third round. So,
and then he fell into the guillotine, but.
Yeah,
and right after that, he got.
I can see Pettis hanging around
by Holloway.
Welterweight. He's not relevant. Pettis isn't relevant anymore, and
I'm really struggling to see him be all that even successful at welterweight. He's just not. Size isn't everything, but you and I remember when he was talking about I can go down to featherweight because I don't cut to lightweight.
Well, I think Pettis has all things considered. He's had a successful career.
Very.
Had a great career.
He's got a bunch of memorable moments. He's got a title win. He's got a title defense.
Yeah.
Got a Wheaties box.
Some guys don't even ever get that. So I'm
quasi facetious about it, but he was literally on the Wheaties box for a while.
So it's weird that we're talking. 31 years old.
Time flies, doesn't it?
It's weird. It's weird to be talking about a 31-year-old man this way, but it's just that he started really young, and he kind of flamed out. He kind of flamed out very quickly.
He had a brilliant rise, but yeah, he's struggling now.
To have those things, it means a lot.
It does.
I mean, because some guys never even get there.
The majority of people who compete professionally in MMA will never accomplish half of what Pettis has accomplished.
Right. So I think he has. My point is, even if Pettis doesn't hang around in the UFC much longer, he has a lot he can hang his hat on.
Yeah.
And he has nothing to be ashamed of.
Not a darn thing. Well, maybe the weight cut in the Holloway fight, but
I mean, but still, to have held to have that highlight reel win over Benson Henderson, win that title, come to the UFC, eventually win the lightweight title, defend it against Gilbert Melendez, a guy who never gets finished or submitted at the time, and
still doesn't all that often.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, he's had a good career. It's just I'm struggling. I guess my problem is I'm struggling to see him ever becoming a relevant contender again. I'm not saying it's impossible. I just think I think those injuries took a toll on him.
I agree.
Because he was getting injured a lot. Well, speaking of meteoric rises, the UFC also announced the main event for Fight Night 147 when they are back in London. We're apparently getting Jorge Masvidal versus Darren Till. Now, assuming the fight actually takes place, I do like that fight. So this is also an ESPN Plus card.
Yes. I like the fight.
For a while. Man, Masvidal took 2018 off. Wow.
Yeah.
Weird.
I heard Masvidal described as like the Miami version of a Diaz brother, and I think that's accurate. And
I mean, Till's hype train got derailed hard by Woodley.
Yeah, there's going to be some pretty serious. I'm very curious to see how he rebounds, especially against a guy like Masvidal, who's really good everywhere.
Can he still even make weight?
That's the other big question about Till, because that is a serious weight cut for him to get to 170.
And
he's a big guy.
I don't dislike Till. I think he's what is his accent called? Is it called Scouse?
Yeah, he's from Liverpool and he has a Scouse accent.
He's got that cool Scouse accent, and
he speaks Portuguese in it. The Scousegese accent is like it's one of my favorite things.
I think a lot of people were just kind of seduced and manipulated by his Scouse accent, and he said all the right things, And
he fought all the right fights. I mean, this was a guy who.
What did he really do? He didn't really, to me, he didn't really singularly stand out enough to really earn that title shot. He was not ready for that situation.
No, I was not the biggest fan of him getting the title shot when he did, because I thought there were other contenders who had a better body of work to be drawn from. But at the same time, he had beaten everyone that was put in front of him, and he had said the right things.
But he's like you listen to him, and like he sounds like this, almost like Sage, And I think people were he fooled people, and his hype train got massively derailed. So does it get back on track here? We'll see. Because Masvidal is a tough opponent for him.
Masvidal's tough for pretty much anybody. I mean, he's good about slipping. He's got solid punches. He's good about finding the target with them.
He's not unbeatable, but he is very tough.
He's not unbeatable, but I don't think too many people have ever looked good against him either.
He arguably should have beaten Paul Daly at welterweight.
Yeah, he should have. I thought he beat Iaquinta, their fight. I thought that was horribly scored.
There you go.
I mean, he's a tough guy to look good against.
I mean, knocked out Cerrone, knocked
Oh,
out.
he put up that was a shocking beating that he put on
Yeah.
Cerrone, because he beat him the entire first round and then finished him in the second.
Even against Maya, he lost by split decision.
There's a very real argument that he won that fight. And had he won that fight, he'd have been the one that fought Woodley.
So I'm curious to see how Till bounces back here.
Yeah. We don't know a whole lot else about that. We have a few fights announced for that card, but I want to see a full bout order for that, and they're still making fights for it. It's their return to London. Yeah, that's
Jack
the O2
Martin
arena.
Versus John Phillips, Claudio Silva versus Danny Roberts, Gokhan Saki versus Saparbek
Safarov.
Dominic Reyes.
That's a good fight.
That's a very
Reyes and Uzdemir is a good fight.
I mean, Reyes is actually like
the last prospect standing at light heavyweight.
Yeah, after Roberson just got embarrassed last night.
Roberson's a middleweight.
Then why do you fight Teixeira?
To get paid? He took it on short notice.
He went up to get the payday, I guess.
Well, he went up to get the payday, and in fairness, he nearly won.
Okay.
But no, he's a middleweight, not a light heavyweight.
Well, Uzdemir Reyes is a decent fight, at least, for that.
It's a really good fight. I like that fight. Okay, I've mentioned it a few times, and I have to actually discuss it.
And I think the woman who got murdered by Shevchenko has come back from the dead to fight Molly McCann.
Look, my experiments in necromancy aside, that's not a good fight. Neither of them are any good. UFC on ESPN2 got one of the fights that I said I want to see because I want to see someone die in the cage. Edson Barboza and Justin Gaethje, and the violence these two bring.
I'm sorry, Edson Barboza, and I'm sorry to Edson Barboza's family.
Oh God, these two are going to kill each other.
Gaethje's just gonna kill Barboza.
I mean, they're gonna Gaethje said he wants to finish Barboza with leg kicks. Now, bear in mind, I kind of hate the notion that just because someone is a good leg kicker, they have good leg kick defense, because Barboza doesn't. I mean, neither does Aldo, for that matter.
Okay.
So just, again, the point being that just because you have good leg kicks does not inure you to being on the receiving end of leg kicks. These two are going to destroy each other physically, and I'm torn simply because Gaethje's pressure, while relentless, is not fast-paced necessarily.
Uh-huh.
And I think you need that combination of not only I'm going to make you fight off the back foot the entire fight, but I do think you need an element of you're going to do it. We're going to be doing it, fast.
You know what? He likes to brawl. I thought Vic was one of his more intelligent performances, at least.
I'd agree with that.
And he doesn't always fight smart. That could play well for Barboza. We'll see.
Either guy can win this fight. When this got announced, I think I saw this. So Justin Gaethje, you're a Division I level wrestler, and you're going to fight Edson Barboza. So what's our game plan? Forward pressure and leg kicks. Darn right it is. But no, I can't wait for that fight. I don't think it'll be the main event, or they haven't announced the main event, because that will be that's the Philly card. So March 30th.
Barboza. I'd be fine with Barboza versus Gaethje as the main event.
As would I. Give me 5 rounds of those two maniacs trying to kill each other, please. Took that into my veins.
Figueiredo versus Formiga will be in Nashville.
Yeah, that had been previously announced. We finally have the bout order and full card for UFC 234. 234, the Melbourne card.
Oh.
This is not a very good card. I like the main event. Whitaker and Gastelum, solid fight, and I'm a big fan of Robert Whitaker.
I'm going to Anderson Silva's open workout on Tuesday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I like oddly, like the UFC sent me the invite and I RSVP'd, and I'm like, well, I went to the press conference at his gym last time. You can't not let me go.
Nice. You played their words against him. I appreciate it.
I live like 2 miles away. You have to you have to let me go to this. But granted, the thing is, it's UFC handling this one. It was Anderson Silva's PR people handling the last one. So
I hope that's fun.
Yeah. Anderson and I seem to be on good terms now. So I think I've gotten him to warm up to me. So I feel like there was a time where basically he looked at me like I was like, do you remember what was the third Dirty Harry movie? Magnum Force, I think. No,
I believe so. No, there's not the second.
Third one. Remember that thing where he goes in he tells those punks like you're like the dog shit at the end of my shoe, can like dry it out. I feel like Anderson basically used to look at me like that. So I feel like we're not quite there. We've kind of moved past that at this point.
Yeah, the co-main for that event is Silva and Adesanya, which I'm torn because on a purely like spectacle side of things, I like that. I think there's some potential. I also think Adesanya is going to beat him.
Oh, Sudden Impact was the one I was thinking.
That's it, Sudden Impact. Yeah, it's Dirty Harry, Magnum Force, Sudden Impact, and then the Deadpool.
Right.
But the point being, like all of 234. I mean, Robert Whittaker. I think he's the second best middleweight ever in the UFC. He has a great resume, and I think he will wind up surpassing Anderson Silva at some point. Maybe not in number of title defenses or whatnot, but just in terms of his.
You don't think Gastelum wins the belt?
It's tough, man. It's really tough because Gastelum's a tough opponent. Gastelum does a few things that can trouble Whittaker. I lean towards Whittaker because at this point I just don't pick against him.
Yeah.
But that's a good fight. The co-main event's good, but I mean the rest of that card, man.
Why is Hani Yahya fighting a
nobody?
Yeah.
Like Ronnie Yahya is a very underappreciated bantamweight.
Well, not a guy who has 2 UFC wins, but still.
I mean, again, like Yahya should be fighting contenders, I think, at this point.
Maybe not a contender, but like a ranked
opponent. A ranked opponent.
Because
Yaya's ranked.
This is a 2-fight.
Give me Yahya and Sandhagen, man. But yeah, I mean, after that, then you have like Devontae Smith and Dong Hyun Ma, who I don't know about, unless that's.
Yeah, it's.
This is the Maestro Dong Hyun Kim. Okay. I wanted to make sure I was remembering that.
It's kind of slim pickings here.
No, this is a really weak card outside of the main event. This is a shockingly weak pay-per-view. If anything happens to those top 2 fights,
we're in trouble.
I mean, they have enough redundancy to where, especially with local flavor, to where if one of them falls out, they can do something.
Maybe Adesanya is going to be fighting for an interim title next month. Or Anderson Silva.
Yeah, it could happen. If Whittaker falls out, we could just do Adesanya versus Gastelum for the interim belt.
Anderson is coming off a win.
But that card is held together with duct tape and chewing gum. All right. Were there any other fight announcements we wanted to really have a look at? Because there are a few other, news items I want to touch on.
Just there aren't any other burning fight announcements I have right now.
Then let's move on to the. I don't think I have any reservations saying the best women's MMA fighter ever, Amanda Nunes.
Yeah.
Says she's not gonna fight at featherweight again. She doesn't like being unable to fit into her skinny jeans.
I mean, is anyone surprised here?
There's not really a division.
Featherweight is barely even in a division in the first place. It was the Cyborg Memorial Trophy, basically.
Yeah, they haven't really invested a whole lot into it beyond that. And I think this is also kind of an example of,
The first champion vacated the division simply because she wouldn't fight Cyborg.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Jermaine.
I don't know.
I don't know quite what they do.
This is kind of why super fights and champ fights are stupid.
I was okay with it here because there was no bantamweight contender, and featherweight's not really a division on the women's side of things yet.
Okay.
And this was a very real possibility.
So but Cyborg fights for the UFC. What do you do with her now?
I don't know. It's a tough call. You either try to rebuild that division and just kind of accept that she's going to be your champion again for a bit, even after the loss, or you might wind up cutting her.
Kind of a pretty sad state.
I mean, I saw this get floated. Cyborg actually mentioned that she's not opposed to going up to lightweight and moving to the PFL to fight Kayla Harrison.
Ugh.
Which,
I mean, with how much Cyborg cuts,
lightweight might be her optimal weight class, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I mean, I think she'd beat Kayla, and I love Kayla, but that's just a bridge too far at this point for her, I think.
I don't know what you do.
It's a rough spot, but I mean, there was actually I think Amanda posted a video of her trying to fit into those jeans. And apparently there's a bit of a cultural thing too around South American women just wearing irrationally tight jeans. I was not aware of this, but apparently it's a thing. And Nunes is Brazilian. So.
Was that what that picture circulating Twitter with Nunes was about?
I don't know. I don't know the one you saw. I saw like the video clip that she posted of like jumping and trying to get these jeans up over her hips.
It's hard for me to even really care.
Yeah, I don't know what they're doing. I mean, there's not a lot, again, like there's like not a division at featherweight, and then there's not really a good bantamweight contender for her yet either. So I think she might have like just on Twitter kind of spitballed the idea of going down to flyweight and fighting Shevchenko again. I don't think that's
the
future.
Amanda, you got your 2 belts.
I mean, she doesn't have a massive cut to bantamweight, but that's a legit cut for her. I don't think flyweight's reasonable for her.
I don't think so either.
And quite frankly, even if she could make it, I think her performance would be severely compromised. And
just fight out the bantamweight division, give up the Cyborg Memorial title, do whatever.
And finally, since we're talking briefly about featherweights, the best featherweight ever as of this recording, basically.
Max Holloway.
No, Max isn't there yet. I think he will be. I'm going to be very clear about this. This time next year, I think Max Holloway probably is.
He's already there.
But Jose Aldo has announced that he wants to kind of have 3 fights this year and then retire at the end of 2019. I
mean, I feel like we were already at this point with Jose already a short time ago.
Yeah, I mean, we all kind of speculated, but I don't think he'd laid out a specific plan for it.
I mean, I don't buy it. First of all, Daniel Cormier laid out a specific plan too.
Yeah.
He actually stays to it.
Still got a few months to see.
So.
Well, I think Aldo's in a different position from Cormier too. I tend to think Aldo's probably on the level here.
Title before he calls it quits? Is Aldo looking to fight for the title before he calls it quits?
I don't think so.
So what does he want to do? What does he want exactly?
I forgot. I looked this up, but I forgot the specifics of it. I know he said he wanted to fight 3 times this year.
Okay.
What specifically he's looking for? I don't think he's looking for a return to the title. I don't think that's feasible so long as Holloway's the champion.
Not looking for a rematch with McGregor.
I don't think that's feasible either. I mean, I don't think he'd turn it down, but I think he's just looking to have a somewhat active year and then, have a few wins and leave it behind.
All right, here's what he wants to end his career in Brazil. Fortaleza. So he's got his next fight lined up in Fortaleza. Then he wants to do 237 in Curitiba, and then another fight in Brazil. So he wants to fight in Brazil 3 more times.
Yeah.
So how do you match up the guy who's probably going to end his career in 3 fights if he holds to that? I don't know.
I mean, he's signed to, who's he signed to fight next? Because he has it signed. I can't remember. Oh, Moicano. It's Moicano, which is a great fight, by the way. I mean, that's a really good fight.
Moicano, even though he's lost to Max Holloway twice, he's basically still in the title picture.
I kind of like Moicano's chances, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
But I think you wind up doing, for want of a better phrase, like the fights that you just couldn't, that just didn't get made.
Good against Jeremy Stevens. He had a good performance against Stevens.
He did. One of the only guys to finish Stevens. I think if you're going to match him up, if you assume that he's telling that this is the plan and he tends to stick to it, I like the Moicano fight. It gives a young, not up-and-comer, a young guy already near the top of the division, a chance against a legitimate legend and one of the best to ever do it.
I think one of those fights has to be Cub Swanson.
I would love one of those fights to be Cub Swanson. I think Swanson asks some interesting questions of Aldo generally. I would love to see that be one of those fights.
And Swanson, I think, is overdue for a big fight anyway. So.
And then I think you get Uriah Faber out of retirement and we do the rematch.
No. No.
Oh, I would pay so much money for that. No.
I would.
I might be the only one, but I absolutely would.
I would take your dog away from you.
Yeah, leave my dog alone. Actually, I have 2. I have 1 I will give you. You can have the 13-year-old.
I would punish you. I would punish you if that fight happened. You would not. You would rue the day.
And then, so let me think. So again, you have the Moicano fight. I like Swanson as one of them. Frankly, I think you might do Swanson as the last one. And then, so what one would be in the middle?
If these in fact are his last 3 fights, I want one of them to be against against Cub Swanson.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think you have Moicano.
But let's see if it'll be 3 times and if he'll actually hold to that.
True. It does bear, but
he could get hurt and just decide to do it early. I don't know.
It's entirely possible. But if this is the way it actually is about to end for him, again, Aldo's one of the best ever. And
could be fighting out a contract and could be looking to get out of a contract, go somewhere else, like Machida.
That's possible. I don't think we'll see him in Bellator, but crazier things have happened.
I mean,
Aldo's. I hate to say Aldo's old because
he's not. Could see him in ONE FC.
I suppose you could.
Apparently they have some money going around.
They don't actually have money. They're writing IOUs they can't pay off.
I mean, apparently, Brandon Vera talked about getting put up in nice hotels and stuff.
Oh, they're operating on a non-sustainable financial model. More the point there.
But they're still here.
Yeah. Will they be here in 2 years?
I mean, I think they will.
I'm not so sure. They're burning money.
I don't know what kind of money they're making, but I mean, they've managed to last this long. I mean, we're almost at the end of the decade, and I mean, they're almost 10 years old. I mean, Strikeforce's model after they bought out the Elite XC assets and expanded, they did not have a sustainable model, right? And eventually they got bought out by the UFC. So, yeah, I just don't think. I don't know. ONE FC has managed to hang in there, so I don't know what's going on over there and how they're staying afloat, but they're staying afloat.
Jeez, Aldo's only 32. Dude's been fighting since 2004.
So,
golly.
I mean, it's possible some of these ages could be, trumped up. They could be.
I mean, I tend to think that's about accurate.
Like, I got to be honest. I don't think Keira Knightley's age that is on most listings is her real age.
All right.
I think she's probably. I don't think Margot Robbie is like. How old is Margot Robbie?
No earthly idea.
Margot Robbie is reportedly 28. I don't believe she's really 28, personally.
I mean, they do wonders with plastic surgery these days.
So, but Aldo, he was very young when he was like what, 22-ish when he was in the WEC when he first started.
Let's see if he's 32. He was born in '86, so he's a year younger than I am. He debuted in the WEC in 2008.
21, 22.
Yeah. And that man has a lot of time on him too. Like, he had a lot of fights.
And he had a long run. He had a long run at the top.
He had a real long run at the top. Again, he's one of the best ever. And
it's just too bad that...
I mean, it comes to an end for everyone.
It's too bad that Holloway's already surpassed him.
Not yet. He will. I think Holloway will, but I don't think he has yet.
In my eyes, he has.
He has 2 title defenses.
And my eyes are the only eyes that matter.
Mm-hmm. All right, Schrodinger. Okay, I think that's all I had listed here. Any other major news items that I skipped over that you want to touch on?
Let's see. I think we've kind of tangentially gone over the main things coming out of the event, basically.
All right. You ready to do plugs then and call it a day?
Right. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm supposed to be going to the Anderson Silva open workout for the Adesanya fight on Tuesday, provided everything goes on as planned. So it'll be similar to when I did the press conference last month. Also, my preview of Mortal Kombat 11, I went to the event, is out. Check out that. I also got to take some photos of the WWE superstars that were there. So Ronda, Xavier Woods, Kofi Kingston, Zelina Vega. I got photos of all of them. You can check those out in Wrestling Zone. Go to
Ronda's going to be Sonya, right?
Yes, she's playing. So those rumors were true.
So if your Sonya character loses twice in a row, can you port her over to Super Smash Brothers?
Nope. I don't even get that joke. Like that's like porting her to like what Smash? Are you saying Smash Brothers is WWE?
That would be the equivalent I'm drawing.
I think that's a huge insult. I think that's a huge insult to Smash Brothers, quite frankly.
Really, you're not a big fan of Smash Brothers?
I am a big fan.
Or you're not a fan of WWE?
I'm saying you're insulting Smash Brothers by making that comparison.
It's an easily accessible, cartoony, and I don't mean that as a negative, cartoony party game.
It does exactly, and it does not deserve to be besmirched.
And that's all WWE is.
It still does not deserve to be besmirched in that way. With that,
it is again. I like Smash Brothers. I got a lot of hours in that franchise over the years. Yeah, I love it to death. It is the professional wrestling of party/fighting games.
Oh, boo!
If you have a better example, I'm open to it.
Balls to your pessimism.
It's not pessimistic.
All right, so yeah, she's in the game. So check out my preview of that in games. Check out my photos of the event in wrestling, and then go to Movies TV to check out my review of Glass, the #1 movie of the weekend. I did not care for Glass, but I thought it was significantly better than Split.
Unfortunately, you were in the minority on Split. I seem to recall.
I was in the minority. That's why it surprises me that Split got the good reviews and this one got awful reviews, because this one at least has a good good first half, and then it just unravels in the second half, in the third act. So it confuses. Like I don't get like why people hate this movie but love Split. It makes no sense to me.
You think that you think your opinion of one should be roughly concurrent with your opinion of the other?
No, because I feel like if you're gonna like one, I can see this one being more liked.
Okay.
Not that it should be. I thought Split was an awful, horrible movie. Awful. And I don't get what I think what it is it's partly nostalgia, and people I think people like the idea more of a sequel to Unbreakable than actually wanting a sequel to Unbreakable.
Okay, that's fair.
But
I haven't seen it yet, so I have no opinion.
And I saw a lot of your kind of postings on Facebook on The Punisher Season 2. I think you made fairly good observations, but did you finish the season yet?
I did. I have finished
it. Did you like the fight scene with Keith Jardine?
I did. I saw him like, oh, hey, Keith Jardine, man. Good for him.
I thought that was one of the better fight scenes of that season.
Now, I showed that to one of my brothers who's a bit of a gym rat and just said, you now have the appropriate reaction to people doing curls on the squat rack. You come in like Frank Castle and just...
Here's the problem, though. It did kind of run out of steam toward the end. And I think the best action scene was that shootout after the robbery in episode 8. Don't you agree?
That's a good one. I don't think that was my favorite.
I just feel like it kind of ended on a kind of like a whimper, kind of had an uneventful ending.
In a lot of I don't want to get too deep into it because I don't want to be here for an hour and a half talking about it. These people have suffered enough listening to us so far.
Oh, what?
I think they never properly reconciled the two disparate plot points that they wanted to really touch on, which was Frank and Billy going at it again, and the Schultzes and the John Pilgrim stuff. I don't think those 2 points ever.
They should have just taken one, maybe chop off 3 to 5 episodes, and just make that your main central plot.
I would either that or just do it in 2 halves. Like, give me 6 episodes of one of those arcs and then 6 episodes of the other, and I would have been okay.
All right.
But the way they just never quite blended.
No, they never convalesced. I agree. That's a fair. And Madani sucked.
Look, Madani was the worst thing about season 1. They not only brought her back, but they made a worse character in Billy's therapist.
The therapist was horrible.
I mean, well, yay, let's have a Harley Quinn knockoff, but minus the charisma and interesting backstory and interesting plot points. And oh god, there's so much in this season that I do genuinely enjoy. I loved the fight scene I love the opening one. I love the fight scene in the bathroom and in the bar in episode 1. I genuinely liked that. I like the shootout scene in the sheriff's station that they have in episode 2 or 3.
Yeah, the assault on precinct.
Yeah, their play on assault on precinct 13. I really enjoyed that. I loved both of the confrontations between Pilgrim and Castle. I loved their shootout in the hotel, and I loved their fist fight at the end. I really enjoyed both of those. There's a lot good in this show. There's also a lot that drags it down. And again, if I have to choose between season 1 and season 2, I will choose season 1 of the. I much preferred that.
I also feel like the writers struggle with how they want to write this character.
I don't think it's as much Castle as it is the stuff around him that they kind of struggle with. I think they have a really good grip on Frank, and I think Bernthal has a really great grip on the character as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they really have a keen grasp on how everything relates to the world and how it all relates to each other, because there's a lot of stuff that just drags over this season, and there's also great stuff too.
Shame on you journalists and clickbait writers saying like, oh, Pilgrim's an alt-right villain or something. He was not alt-right. Okay,
not even close.
He was
he's a reformed and now devoutly religious hitman.
Right.
He specifically has no political agenda.
Right.
Like don't get me wrong,
his
works
bosses,
to keep
yes.
his bosses do. And fine, talk about them if you want. Him as a I don't think he cares. Like he's a reformed neo-Nazi.
Right.
Like he's expressly anti-alt-right.
And when he meets them again, he soundly rejects them
and proceeds to violently murder them.
Yeah, so I'm like,
no, I think look, the phrase alt-right, and I don't want to go on too long about this.
Yeah.
There was a time when it actually meant what it is supposed to mean, which is ethno-nationalism, the majority of which, especially in the United States, is white supremacy. That's
Right.
the alt-right.
Right.
Then it got thrown around and applied to everyone who is right of center, to the point where now it doesn't actually mean anything.
Right. So, I mean, like,
frankly, I wanted more Pilgrim in this show.
Even if it's the stereotypical Hollywood view of alt-right, like he does not fit the profile at all.
No.
So that
not at all. That's a deeply and profoundly misguided view of the character.
Honestly, I just feel like it was a lame attempt for clickbait writers to get attention and for the writers to build false controversy for the show.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that.
But yeah, I didn't dislike Pilgrim either. But yeah,
no, I wanted more of him, quite frankly.
Unfortunately, this is going to be it for the Punisher, because it's going to get canceled.
Look, I found my silver lining for the cancellation of the Punisher, which is going to break my heart when it's announced in 2 weeks.
Right. We're never going to have to see Madani again, or hear.
I will never have to see Madani or Dr. Krista ever again, and I will be 100% okay with that.
I want to know what the issue with Madani is for me. It's the actress is British, and her accent just sounds horrible. Her American accent, it's one of the least convincing accents I ever. It falters so much. You can tell.
It's that I can't stand the way they write the character mostly. Like I'm happy to. I agree with you about her accent, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't.
Just come out and admit you're still attracted to Billy Russo and you wanted to stop him the whole time he was laid up in the hospital.
Look, I didn't like the way she was written in season 1. I don't like the way she's written in season 2, and they doubled down on it with Billy's therapist as a character and make it worse.
Season 1, I'm like, why are we we meet her mother like right off the bat? Like, why are we wasting all this time with this character? It was so weird to me.
Yeah, I agree. All right, but
thank you, Robert.
I will check out your review of that now that I've seen the show. So.
Yes.
We will be back next week. We will have a preview of not that event, because that's not an event. We will be previewing next week UFC Fight Night 144, which is the UFC. So it's on ESPN Plus 2, because the UFC on ESPN Plus they're bringing too many people to the party. Like they're just bad friends. You don't need this many pluses. But we'll be previewing that card. It's main evented by Austin Sao and Moraes. It has Aldo versus Moicano. It's a really solid card. Charles Oliveira is fighting on that card against David Tamer. There's some good stuff on that card. So next week we'll be previewing that, and of course go over all the major news items.
I am so excited about Austin Sao Moraes. I'm
getting there. I'm really getting there. I enjoyed their first fight, for as weird as it was at times. I've been on the Moraes bandwagon for a while, though, so I'm excited anytime he fights.
Well, I feel bad, even as bad as I feel for Moraes. But yeah, some good fights on that card.
All right, as for me, let me see. You can find me this week. I will be